You know what time it is. Time to hang out with Mr. Coop. With Mr. Cooper. With Mr. Cooper. With Mr. Cooper. Get the latest scoop. From Mr. Cooper. From Mr. Cooper. From Mr. Cooper. With Mr. Coop. With Mr. Cooper. With Mr. Cooper. With Mr. Cooper. Get the latest scoop. From Mr. Cooper. From Mr. Cooper. Yeah.
Welcome to the Big Scoop with Coop. I'm your host, Coop. Big shout outs to everybody that's listening right now on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, or wherever you're listening to. Also, don't forget, if you want to see the video recording of this show, make sure you go to thebigscoopwithcoop.com where you can catch episodes from season 1 all the way now. Also, you can catch me on Facebook, facebook.com/thebigscoopwithcoop. Also on Instagram, you can catch me there at Big Scoop with Coop, and on YouTube at The Big Scoop with Coop. All right, people, enough about me. Today's guest, he is a former college basketball player. Now he is an author. He played for the University of California, Santa Barbara basketball team. Now he has 2 books out. It's called MoonFlower and Darling, You Are Not Alone. Ladies and gentlemen, JD Slajchert. Now, JD is doing some big things in his life and in his career. Like I say, he's a former college basketball player. Now he's an author. Got 2 books out. It's called MoonFlower and Darling, You're Not Alone. We're going to speak about how these books came to be, his inspiration. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about his basketball career also. All right, people, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, JD Slajchert. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and the only Mr. JD Slajchert. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael, man, it's an honor to be here. The Big Scoop with Coop is one of the coolest podcast names I've ever heard of or shows, and I got to give you all the credit for that one because I mean, coming from a writer, the titles are important, you know. So I was a big fan of that, but man, just happy to be here and happy to speak with you.
Hey, no problem. How's your day going so far?
It's been a wild last few weeks. I mean, obviously the book's coming out. So my book is coming out next week. Mm-hmm. And I'm on the full tour right now. I actually just drove back from Oakland, back to where I live in Los Angeles yesterday. So and I was doing like a little book tour event out there, which was awesome. And I'm happy to talk more about too, but it's nice to be home, sleep in your own bed for sure. So
that's what I'm talking about. I'm glad you're back in your bed. You can be relaxed. And while you're laying down, you can look at that lovely poster that's right there, right behind you also.
Yes, sir.
Now, JD, man, you've done a lot in your career already at the age that you're at already. I want to start in the beginning. You know, before you became an author, you know, you had the ball in your hand and you was doing your thing with that. Now, when did you first realize that you had a love for basketball?
You know, basketball is kind of it's where my story really begins. And I was always playing hoop, even when I was young. And the funny part about it is I was never actually very good. I was kind of the undersized redhead and just, you know, had like great energy and kind of an undying passion for the game. But like I said, I wasn't very talented or very gifted at the sport. My dad played in college at Yale. And he was the one that sort of inspired me to pick it up and play basketball. So he was my coach growing up, you know, taught me how to shoot a jumper and set screens and do all that sort of stuff. And what sort of happened was, you know, I just like loved it so much that I just stuck with it. And when I got into high school, I was only about 5'8". And, you know, I didn't make the varsity team my first year, but I was just someone who loved to be on the team and have an opportunity. And then what happened was I went from 5'8" to almost 6'6" my senior year of high school. And I went from, you know, just being a guy who was happy to be on the team to one of the leading scorers in the county and the state, and getting recruited by a lot of D1 programs. And you know, it was like a life-changing growth spurt. And and so it went from like this sort of, you know, fun activity to like, dang, this is something that could really get me into college and get me into a great school. So I was recruited to a boarding school where I did what's called a postgraduate year at Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire. And kind of the reasoning behind that is like, since I was such a late bloomer, the thought was if I repeated my senior year and reclassified, they called it, then I would increase my recruiting opportunities to other schools. So I went from like a couple D1s, wanting to recruit me to like, up to 9 or 10. And then I chose to commit to UC Santa Barbara, which was just right in my backyard in my hometown. And I played there for 4 years, and I had an incredible experience, with some amazing guys and teammates. And I ended up starting my junior year, and we, had some ups and downs, but my senior year, we were one of the best teams in the conference. And one of my best friends, Gabe Vincent, ended up making it to the NBA, plays for the Miami Heat now. Yep. And then another friend of mine who actually I played with at Exeter for a spell is Duncan Robinson, who's also on the Miami Heat. So I've had a crazy basketball journey and story, and it's introduced me to some amazing people. And I just feel very blessed, like I feel like I had some lucky breaks. I also worked super hard, but man, I couldn't have asked for more out of my basketball career, which made it easy to, put it aside and move on to the next career of mine. But I love my hoop journey.
So what made you put down the basketball?
Pick
up the pen.
Yeah. It's it's a great question, and one that I think happened much easier than you'd think. Like, I think as a basketball player, that was my life. Like I was so dedicated to it, and my whole world. I talk about this a lot because I got little brothers that still play. One of them is playing at Point Loma in San Diego, and the other one's playing at the University of Pennsylvania, UPenn. And they're just like me, man. They're how they eat, how they sleep. Everything they do revolves around being ready for practice the next day. And that's how I was, because I felt like I was so lucky to be at that level that I wanted to do everything I could to maximize it. But, it really is, it was a supernatural transition, Michael, because what happened was I had this incredible fan who was this little boy named Luke Bodden that I met when I was in high school. And he was sick with something called sickle cell disease. And he actually told his sister that the last thing that he wanted to do before he went into the hospital for a full year of isolation for a bone marrow transplant was meet me and play basketball with me. And I was 17 at this point in my life. And it was a life-changing thing, man, because to have someone like look at you like you're a hero when you're that young really makes you want to do everything you can in your power to live up to that. And, he ended up making out of the hospital, and we ended up kind of becoming like best friends. And to the point where he made it then to all my games in college at UC Santa Barbara. And for the next 3 years, we like celebrated birthdays together. We used to get pizza together after every game because that was his favorite food. And then he tragically, on September 14, 2016, passed away from a stroke at the age of only 10. And Michael, man, I can say it as clear as day. Once he passed away, I knew, I was like, you know what, I gotta do more just in my life in general. And that was really the turning point where I went from this guy who was just an athlete into, then an author and philanthropist. And my first book, MoonFlower, is written about my relationship with Luke Bodden. And I started writing it, at the age of 21. So while I was finishing out my college career, I was also writing a book on the side. And those were kind of going on simultaneously. So by the time I graduated, it was like, boom, I had a book. So I didn't really lose a step, if that makes sense. But
that's what I'm talking about. Ladies and gentlemen that's watching worldwide right now, this shows right here, JD proves you can be an athlete, but also have a mentality and a talent to do other things also at the same time. Look at JD. He went from the ball in one hand to the pen in the next, typewriter, computer, whatever you want to use. And look at what he's done. What is this book number 2?
Yeah, so Darling, You're Not Alone. Yeah, it's my second novel. Yeah.
Okay. Now that's what I want to talk to you about. So you have the first book that you've done. Now you have this that we see right in the background right now. I see it's picking up a lot of popularity. I see a lot of people is jumping on this book, and it's called Darling, You're Not Alone. What actually inspired you to go for book number 2 and to title it this, and what is this book about?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of honesty in this answer. Is my first book, MoonFlower, as you can probably tell from just that explanation I gave, was super heartfelt. Like, I put everything in that book, man, and I was so overwhelmed by the adulation and kind of success of that project, where I really wasn't sure what would follow. Like, I would joke with my manager, who's also like my best friend, and kind of it was like the agent on that project, MoonFlower, Chris Veronis, and say, man, like, I don't know what I'm going to write next, but there's no way it can live up to this first one. Like, I don't know how we're going to follow this. So I think I kind of like put off doing a second book for a while because I was sort of afraid. Like, I thought I didn't know if I had it in me to tell a story as good as MoonFlower, being that was based off a real person. You know what I mean? Like, I hadn't, like, Luke was such a powerful character and individual and intellectual and spirit that, I didn't have anything as sort of beautiful in my life as Luke. So it took me a long time to overcome that kind of daunting blank page. But to be honest, what happened was, when I started writing Darling, You're Not Alone, it actually came like way easier than I expected. And the pen just started to flow almost with like a ease that I didn't even have with MoonFlower. And I think what I realized is, as much as I thought I was relying on, true events that happened in my first book, with my second one and it being purely fiction, I actually, like, the world was wide open. Like, I totally was able to go anywhere I wanted and not have any sort of, any reality or nonfiction to stick to. So I could just branch out, and I went all over the place and incorporated like some pretty crazy magical realism into this book, and some pretty out there ideas, and it really has been paying off in a massive way. And some of the reviews we've gotten and people reading it, so it's been but it's trickier for me to exactly articulate where the idea came from, because it's not off of a real person. But what I can tell you is the book is about a 15-year-old boy named Phoenix Ivor, who is someone who is growing up in the small town of Darling, Colorado in the year 1999. And Phoenix is a really gifted mind and someone who's really intelligent, but he's sort of tortured by his own social anxiety and depression that he kind of goes through and deals with. And his sort of safety net and the person he relies on the most is his father, Herman. And Herman is this like glass half full, always positive, kind of like inspirational dude. But the important thing to keep in mind about him is that he used to be a police officer when the book begins, and something happened and he loses his job. And so now he's the security guard at Darling High School, where Phoenix is entering his freshman year. So Phoenix and Herman are walking to school together every day, and Phoenix is starting to try and put together the mystery of like what happened to his dad and why he lost his job. And all this is, very early on in the book, when one morning in 1999, which is the year the book is set, Phoenix walks into the library, and following behind him are two students who, instead of holding books, are holding handguns. And Phoenix survives what at the time in the world of the story is the worst school shooting in US history. And the book carries on from that moment, and I won't, talk too much about what happens next, but it's all about how Phoenix, this kid who already had a lot of problems and already had a lot of doubt in the world, and like what kind of place is this, then has to go through that traumatic experience and not only overcome that, but hopefully find a way to live a beautiful life. And it's an intense story, but it's also one that I think is like full of hope and full of life. And I think is a really important story to talk about and bring into the world, given all that's going on. And yeah, I was gripped by this world, and I'm happy to talk about it all day long, because Darling is a special place, and it's a special book.
And you know what? I really do believe this, JD, that I think that book can hit home. It doesn't matter where you're at, because you're hearing shootings in Texas. You're hearing shootings and stuff that's going on where you're at in California. Mm-hmm. I'm in North Carolina. A lot of stuff was going on. There was something that happened locally in my city probably about a couple of weeks ago, and about 45 minutes away from me also. So I think that book will hit home, like you said, in today's environment with ease. And that right there, you brought reality plus a good story, and you combined it all together. I love that. I definitely love that. Now, how can everybody find this book? How can they get this book?
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that, first of all, man. I mean, I think that's the thought, right? Is like, unfortunately, this has become like an everyday thing in our country, no matter where you live. And, I've had friends who have dealt with this directly. Like I had a friend whose parents were both involved in the Vegas shooting in 2017. She was my best friends, but both her parents did survive, thankfully. There was a shooting at my university the year before I got there, the University of California, Santa Barbara. There's also been, there was one in my hometown, I think in 2018 or 19, in Borderline Bar and Grill. I mean, it's like there's such a frequency to it that it's hard to even look down the list of the statistics. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, the book will be available on Amazon. You could also get it on my website, jdwritesbooks.com. You can also get it at summerhousepublishing.co, which is the publisher I'm with. And then there's also a website for the book where there's like more information kind of on me and the project itself, called darlingyou'renotalone.com, where we also have this letter writing campaign and component that sort of is a kind of an ancillary or additional piece to the project that me and my team put together to work with. And so wherever books are sold, you'll be able to find Darling You're Not Alone November 3rd.
Ladies and gentlemen, November the 3rd, make sure you get this book. Get it for your family, get it for your friends, even get it for your haters. I don't care who they are. Make sure you get this book. Check out the websites. Don't go to it right now because you're watching this interview. After the interview, check out the websites. Learn more about JD. Make sure you get this book once again. You need a Christmas present for somebody's birthday coming up, or if you just love to read, grab the book. Make sure you get it. Make sure you definitely get it. Now, JD, how excited were you when you actually finished the book, when you got that last page done and you was ready to send it off to be published? How excited were you?
Man, I mean, it's an incredible feeling, like I think in life so often we focus on the things we're doing on like a daily basis and the goals ahead. And like, anybody who, I mean, like with this show for you, for example, you've got guests you've had on, you've got guests coming soon, you've got this show currently we're doing right now live and in action. But I think we live in worlds where it's always the what's next mentality, especially if you're as career driven or have as big aspirations as someone like yourself does, right? But I like to think that the experience of putting a book together from front to back and finishing it is truly one of those few moments in my life when I sort of stop and clear my head and think like, you know what, JD, just take an hour to not focus on what's tomorrow or what happened before this, but to really be thankful. And man, it's like stillness, it's like a clearness that's incredible. But to be honest with you, what's hard, I don't know if I'll ever overcome this though, Michael, is like every time I've written a book, so it's only my second time, I find myself really reflecting on the beginning, like of my life and my career and like how far I've come. And it's hard to avoid that thought because it is crazy, it's weird, but because you also think about how people will be reading this like 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. And I've had people with my first book that came out 4 years ago, reach out to me and say they just started it. And I'm like, dang, man, I wrote that a long time ago. So it's something you never really get used to, I think.
And that's crazy because I remember a few seasons ago, I had a few book authors on the show. There's one that's called, there's a lady that's named Zane. She's a very famous book author. She does a lot of different novels and stuff. But it's funny that a reason why I bring her up, because she kind of says the same thing about reflecting back and everything. And I think, in my opinion only, and please correct me if I'm wrong, JD, I think in an author's mentality, when you're writing something and you finish it, you will have those flashbacks. You're going to think about, look at where I've gotten to and where I came from. And that's going to be something that's always, that's going to be there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's crazy, man. That's
it is,
crazy.
man. I mean, it's just I mean, because like, look, I've been working on this book for 3 years, and this is like a night and day thing. And especially when you think about, like we already talked about, the real impact of this story and how this is something that really anybody can read and realize, dang, like I've been through, I know someone that's had this happen or been through it, or it happened in my hometown. And when I realized that, Michael, like I came to the realization. So I'll give you this. In the book, which is maybe one of my favorite parts of the entire story, I have a parable. It's called the parable of the three bricklayers. So you ask 3 bricklayers, people who are all doing the same thing, laying bricks, what do you do? The first one says, I'm laying bricks. The second one says, I'm building a house. And the third one says, I'm creating the church of God. The first bricklayer has a job. The second bricklayer has a career. And the third bricklayer has a calling. And I say that because I don't really think of myself as a writer or like a novelist. I think of myself as, this is my calling to tell these stories that will make an impact in the real world. And like, when you think about anything you're doing like that, you go to such a place of like I feel like I never get tired. I feel like I'm always trying to figure out how to make this better or get it into the next person's hands, because I think it's that important. Like I think it's so much bigger than me or any other, it's not. So I guess what I'm trying to do and say in a roundabout way is like, this isn't a book to me. This is a message that the world needs to hear. And that's kind of how I think about it. And to have that finish is a wild feeling.
I can't stress it enough. Once again, November the 3rd, go get the book. Go get the book. You know what? I'm going to rephrase that. November the 3rd, go get his calling. Go get it. Exactly. That's what you need to do. Yeah. Seriously. Right. Now, JD, are there any other projects that you're planning to work on that you'll like the world to know about right now in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always writing for sure, and the next projects are certainly in discussion and in the works, and part of that is sort of out of my control about like the order in which things will be released. Like I have kind of 2 different projects that are both in similar stages. One is sort of a trilogy, so that's like a new experience for me. I've never written something like that. It's the first installment of that, and then the other one's just like another standalone novel, like Moonflower and Darling. And I don't know which one will be out next, but I'm always on the speaking tour. So maybe in the more immediate, you'll see me going from places all over California where I live, but to even out of the state and other places, talking about this book and hopefully bringing some light to the world. But maybe making it out towards your way one of these days. One of my good buddies is in Charlotte.
Okay.
So hopefully I'll get out there and maybe run into you if it's not too far. But
I'm back and forth to Charlotte, so you just let me know.
Cool.
Yeah, most definitely.
I love that.
Yes, and I need to ask this also, JD, because we talked about Darling, You're Not Alone. How can everybody get Moonflower?
Moonflower is also available on Amazon. That you can find it there. You can also find it on my website, where Darling You're Not Alone will be, jdwritesbooks.com. And also, on this topic, there's also a Moonflower charity edition, which is a book that I created with actually Luke's physician, who performed his bone marrow transplant, where he was included in the project as well. and 100% of the sales from that project go to the Luke Strong Foundation, which is a nonprofit that supports children that are diagnosed with sickle cell disease. And that's also a nonprofit that I work with too. And, that's a really giving cause. So if you're interested in maybe in MoonFlower, maybe check out the charity edition if you can afford that one. It's a little more expensive for the reason it goes to charity. But if not, the regular edition is also on Amazon, so you can get them both there.
People, donate, donate, donate. All of you have heard me say this before. This is to a good cause. Donate. Get the regular book if you need to, but no, go for the higher one. It's going to a great cause. Plus, you're helping another person out or people out. Plus, you're getting a good book at the same time to add to your collection. Make sure you go get MoonFlower. Make sure you get Darling, You're Not Alone. Get the book. He's working on a trilogy and a novel. I'm telling you, your bookshelf is about to be filled up with JD. Don't say I didn't tell you so, but I'm telling you now, your bookshelf is about to get filled up. That's what I'm talking about. Now, JD, how can everybody follow you on social media so they can make sure they don't miss nothing that you got going on?
Yeah, man, I'm active on the socials. So find me on Twitter and Instagram at JD_Slajchert. That's spelled SLAJCHERT. Hit me up, check out the books. You'll see me posting about my little brothers all the time and my friends that are in the league and all the happenings in my world. But appreciating everyone's support, appreciating what you're doing, man. And it's all about just trying to help and do good things. I mean, I think this world is a complicated one, and I think sometimes, unfortunately, like it's easy to sit back and say how bad things are, but I think it's a much harder yet more gratifying way to live, to really believe in people and believe in stories. And we got to do that. And with your show, which I'm honored to be a part of, it sounds like you're bringing on people that are trying to spread a good message of hope and inspiration and trying to share that. And we got to do as much of that as we can, man, because I believe this world's a good place, but we got to work at it.
That's true. That's true. Now, JD, what advice would you give any male or female that wants to become a successful
author? Great question. And I would say my advice is pretty simple, but I do think it's super important. And it's kind of what I've followed and stuck through to my career is I think the number one most important thing is don't let yourself be your biggest critic and enemy. Like a lot of writing is overcoming the idea in your head that you actually can't write. And when I was growing up, I didn't really get good grades in school. I wasn't really someone that took school at all seriously. I was just like we talked about, I was a basketball player, and I didn't really let that stop me from trying to write my first book. And believe me, there were plenty of people that were a little bit hesitant to say, hey, like, are you sure just coming out of nowhere and writing a book is a good idea? Or, that you really have the ability to do that. But I didn't let that doubt win. And I believed in myself the whole time. And what kind of started to happen is like, you start to see all the people that drop off and don't really believe in you, and you got to sort of live with that. But then you get all these new people in your world that really believe in you and say, hey, this is incredible, and support you. And man, if I hadn't gone through that shift in my career, I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And now I've got this incredible world of people that really believe in me and really support me. And, obviously I love them to death, but there was a time when it was just me and those blank pages. And, as this book comes out, I'm thinking about a lot about that too. And I'm just like, man, thank God I kept going and kept moving and kept writing, because, if I'd have given up, I'd have never gotten here. And I think, to be honest with you, I've met plenty of people, man. I mean, believe me, plenty that's come up to me and say, hey, it's so cool you're writing books. Like, I've got a really great book idea I'm working on, and I never hear from them. And or I say, hey, like, why don't you send it to me? Or why don't we get together for coffee? And they never hit me back. And that's most people. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that have really come through. But everyone's got an idea. Everyone says, oh, one day I'm going to write that book when I'm not so busy. But those are just excuses, man. I mean, you got to make the time and you got to figure it out. So yeah, that would be my advice, is just don't be your own biggest critic, and make the time to start today. And do not wait, because that's just an excuse.
I definitely agree with you on that, JD. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just say this. I'm not an author, but JD just made me feel like I can become an author.
You for sure can, man.
And I want to give a piece of advice as watching worldwide. If you run into somebody like JD that has done 2 successful books and have more in the future to come, if he says, hey, let's get together, let's brainstorm this, don't go the opposite direction. Don't be the dummy. You better go to him and meet him. You don't know what's going to happen, what jewels he's going to drop. People, collaborate. Stop being scared that people will steal your ideas and run. He's trying to help. Daggone it. If I write a book, I bet you I'm going to hit JD up.
That's right. That. Please do. Please do.
Now, JD, this is the last segment of the show right here. It's called Take the Floor. You have up to 2 minutes to say whatever you want. No questions asked. JD Slajchert, take the floor.
Yeah, I think this is a super important part of your show, man. I think this is so cool. And yeah, I mean, I have a pretty simple message, but I think it could not be more important. And I would say, if you're listening to this wherever you are in the world, maybe take a second to remove my voice from your head and just put anyone else's who you care about. But all I'm trying to say is, you're not alone. You're not alone in this world. We're all here for each other, working together and trying to make this world a better place. And if I say anything in this interview, I hope you remember this, is that maybe that person that is in front of you in line at the grocery store or in front of you in traffic on the freeway, instead of putting this idea in your mind of who they actually are as like the person annoying you or frustrating you, remember that they've got a story too. They're maybe going through something you know nothing about, and you got to give them, you got to treat everyone like they're having maybe a tough thing, because a lot of people have a lot of stuff going on. So believe in people, work hard, remember that you're not alone. And that's all I'm out here trying to spread. And that's what I tried to write about in this book. And I hope you can be inspired a little bit more than you were before you started watching this episode today.
That's what's up. That's what's up. JD, man, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I'd love to have you back on in the future.
Hey, I would love to, man. I mean, the Big Scoop with Coop, that is the name, and I would love to be affiliated. I want to be in the Michael Cooper business, man. So you have me back on whenever, dude. I truly enjoyed it. You're super easy to talk to, and this was really fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go to the websites. Make sure you get ready for November the 3rd to pick up the book. Make sure you donate, get MoonFlower. You want to make sure you get everything, fill your bookshelf up with JD. Make sure you do it. All right, people, next episode of the Big Scoop with Coop, my next guest is, you know I don't never announce my next guest. You better stay tuned. Follow me on social media. You better make sure you catch up on everything that I'm doing. All right, people, until the next time on the Big Scoop with Coop. Peace.